Hey everybody, it's Retired at 40. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back for volume 2 of Harvestright freeze dryer hacks. And whether you're a newbie to freeze drying or you're an old timer, you're gonna wanna watch today's video because we're gonna have some accessories, some tips, some tricks, and some must-haves for freeze drying. Let's get into it. So our first tip actually came from the MeWe group, and it was so cool that I had to put it into a video. It involves our old friend, the Foodsaver, some Foodsaver bags, your Mylar, which you're gonna have anyway, and a tray. And that group member's name was Bean. I'm just gonna use the first name. I'm not sure if it's Mr. Bean or Mrs. Bean, but thank you for your input. We're gonna use it in this video. So if you're a foodie or a prepper or just a food preserver or lots of other things, you probably have a Foodsaver already. You're just gonna take a bag like this, and you're gonna wanna cut this angle. Depending on what you're gonna use this for will depend on the degree of your angle. So we're gonna take that angle, we're gonna seal it with the sealer. That was a terrible cut on my part, but the seal is fine. So then we're gonna take this and we're gonna roll it out and we're gonna clip it just a little bit longer than your tray. So the bag that I'm using is almost 11 inches. I'll put a link down to these, a roll of this size bag. This is about 30 inches long, just so you have kind of a baseline. But if you compare, this is a medium-sized tray. Here's a large. The larges will actually fit in this size also. They're a little bit tighter. But I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do with this. So if we had a tray full of freeze-dried food, if you take your Mylar, you can stick that angled edge down in the Mylar. Push your tray in just a little bit, enough so you still have some room. And it creates a really nice funnel. No mess. And this just rolls up and it's totally reusable. You just keep using it over and over again. So this size bag works really well with the medium size. If you go to a large size, I would probably go a step up. You want to make sure that there's plenty of room inside here just to kind of maneuver your food around, but it definitely cuts down on the mess, and I just love this trick. So while we're talking about messes, one of the things that I really don't like about freeze drying is that it can make a huge mess. Obviously it's up to you whether it makes a mess or not, but I always tend to make a mess. So anything that I can do to reduce my messes or cleanup or preparation, I'm all over it. So the type of cleanup that I hate the most is doing dishes, and I'm sure you all know that if you do something that's sticky or that sticks to these Harvestright trays, it's a really big pain to get them to clean up. So what we decided to do about that is make a Teflon liner that's reusable over 100 times. It's soap and water cleanup. It comes in all the sizes. And we also made a pre-cut parchment paper, so if you're doing a certain type of food, that it's just disposable when you're done. The Teflon liners can take very extreme colds and very extreme heats, and they're an easy cleanup. It's a non-stick surface, just like you would use when baking. The parchment paper is custom fit for whatever size tray you have. So we've got small, medium, and large. They come in packs of 100. They make for easy cleanup. You just throw them away when you're done. They're inexpensive, and once you start using them, you'll use them every time. The other thing that's really been a game changer for me is that with the Teflon or the parchment, you can actually layer with it. So if you're doing bananas or something, you can do a layer of bananas on parchment, lay a layer of parchment over the top of those, and go with a second tier. So I want to cover a large spectrum of Harvestright freeze dryer hacks today. So for this next one, we're going to go down to the freeze dryer room. So the pump is kind of the heart and soul of your freeze dryer, and depending on which pump you have, you may have noticed that it runs a little hot. And pretty much the killer of anything that's motorized is heat. And that heat is going to put extra stress on your pump and your parts, and it could potentially reduce the longevity of your pump. The easiest fix to that problem is one of these guys, a fan. But this fan I like in particular because you'll notice there's no wires on it. And really any little fan will work, but I like this one because it's actually rechargeable. So you plug it in for whatever amount of time, then you just hit the button and it's ready to rock and roll. It'll keep your pump cool and hopefully increase the longevity of your pump. This one in particular is relatively expensive. I'll put a link for this and for all the other things I mentioned today down in the description. And while you're down in the description, make sure you shoot me a comment if you have a tip or a hack that you want to see in the next Harvestright Hacks video. This next hack is something that I have preached for pretty much since I started doing freeze drying videos, because if you're a penny pincher like me, or you just are curious and you want to keep an eye on your electrical bills, you need to get a kilowatt meter or a generic knockoff like this one. So I really like this version. I had the actual kilowatt meter with the name kilowatt, but I actually like this one better. I like the display better. This one has more options. You can set your actual kilowatt cost in your area, so it will actually tally up a total of your freeze dry cycle or a running total for you as well. So if you have the large size, you might want to look for a different one. I'm not sure if this one will actually handle a large size. The large size is meant for a 20 amp dedicated circuit. And if you have something plugged into it, it'll give you your wattage, it'll give you your kilowatt hours used, and it'll also give you your amps. So I've got two more tips for you before we part ways today, and the first one has to do with this guy right here. And these have made an appearance on a previous video. They're tray stackers, and I use them for deep freeze, and I also use them for transporting multiple trays, because it allows you to stack trays on top of each other, which saves you room in your freezer. It helps you carry multiple trays at a time, and they're super handy. And these have allowed me to keep my freeze dryer running constantly, because I have two extra sets of trays that I keep loaded with food almost always in the deep freezer, and this just allows me to have all of those trays stacked up so they're not taking a huge amount of room up in the freezer. So you can stack these pretty much as high as you're comfortable with. I've done 8. That to me feels like the maximum that I would be comfortable with. If you're transporting them, I probably wouldn't go that high. These also support a ton of weight, and they're compatible with any size of tray. So small, medium, or large, they'll work with all of them. As long as it's the newer style, probably like in the last 5 years with the rolled edges on the pans. My last tip of the day is to invest in yourself, and you can do that by all these free resources that we have. We've got this channel that does a freeze drying video every Sunday. You can subscribe to that. You can click the bell to get notifications, and it will actually notify you when a new video comes out. We've got a Facebook group. We've got a MeWe group. And then we've also opened up the store that has Mylar and all kinds of freeze drying supplies in order to help you with your journey in freeze drying. We also have a really big announcement coming up early in the new year, and those groups are always the first to know of new news, whether it's freeze drying news or tips or just things like that. So get active in those groups. They're totally free. They're an awesome resource. We do free giveaways for freeze drying stuff. This month we're going to do a set of Teflon liners. Make sure that if you have a great tip, trick, or hack, you leave it in the comments section or share it in the group so it can be shared with the entire freeze drying community. In the meantime, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple. We'll catch you next week.